There was recently a backlash on social media.
AI bias inherently is very hard.
So, at what layer actually the organization need to look into to fix that issue?
Show a visual of a mechanic. Maybe 95% of the time it would show a man.
What organization should do to upskill the talent?
To understand the cost implications of building such models is important.
Openness and the mindset of experimentation and sharing knowledge is key.
Yeah. So the business case is extremely important. I mean,
who knows what is coming in the future? It's interesting that we spoke only a few days back, and just between that time and now, there are so much of new developments in the AI world, right? I think, if we start tracking all of these, maybe our discussion will be a whole 24 hour shows or something like that.
yeah.
Who knows what is coming in the future? All right. So I think one important news that kind of stood out, maybe more so because the provider in this case is a very important player in the AI space, which is Google. There was recently a backlash on social media all over, and as a result of that, Google recently had to stop for their Gemini model the image generation capability. And that seemed to be a big deal because they are actually competing with the likes of Midjourney and OpenAI's GPT-4 and so on. Considering this is a big setback for Google, I wanted to pick your brain in terms of what went wrong and what really is the background, and how do you see this episode panning out from Google, the larger canvas?
Right. So yeah, it is very interesting. I mean, everybody was weeks back, and a lot of things happened between then and now. Is on the back foot. To me, Google really was trying to handle biases in the model uh, effectively, and what happened is they probably tried a little bit too much. Uh, so that's my reading of it, and AI bias inherently is very hard, and because for one thing is AI models are only as good as the data that they're trained on. For example, I mean, if you train on 90% uh, men and 10% women, the model output will be very similar. So if the underlying data is biased, the AI model will also be biased. And then there is also the concept of interpretation bias. So how AI models predict based on what is the data. I mean, they really don't understand the context, right? I mean, if you see, it is all mathematical models, and then what we try to do is based on data, we try to kind of predict the behavior, and then feedback loops are there. AI systems can create feedback loops where the system reinforces and amplifies based on predictions, right? And then a lot of these models are also black box models because neural nets are deep learning ones. It is very hard to understand how they make predictions because the weights really gets adjusted based on the data. And then finally, there is also this socio-technical challenge because I think that is where Google was trying to address the Gemini model. And it tried to engineer the system using a mixture of experts, a model with multiple LLMs work together to tackle this bias. Because, for example, I mean, you don't want things like uh, if I ask the model show a data of a mechanic, show a visual of a mechanic, maybe 95% of the time it would show a man, right? So what Google tried to do in this case is try to reduce the bias, and this eventually led to changing the prompts in a way that the user context got lost in some cases. So that is what I
Yes.
think really happened.
Mm.
Yeah, probably, I mean, Google went a little bit far in tackling this and produced inaccurate results. Uh, so one thing is, I think we'll have to balance the utility of the system versus the harm that it can cause, right? And by trying to make the entire system absolutely harmless.
Yeah, I think it looks like, especially when you are dealing with a sensitive subject, which is specific to a society, and in particular, it's an historical anecdote, right? You can't
Right,
get the facts wrong. That's where probably the system need to, in a way, increasingly, be more smarter to understand that um, when we are dealing with facts versus when we are trying to create an ideal picture of a society, or how, or a, a picture where the harmony exists, right? And from removing all kind of biases, right? So this is, in this case, was more towards the society. How do you see this kind of similar thing, if we draw a parallel to an enterprise, right? I mean, how do you see that um, an implication of such a magnitude um, may impact, if you're talking about in the parlance of enterprise data and information?
right. So even in an enterprise, a similar concept needs to sort of come through, and especially when you're talking about facts and policies and all that. I mean, the model output has to be really anchored around facts. And we saw earlier also there was this incident about Air Canada, where the chatbot gave out a result which was not really as per the airline's policy. And then there was a dispute, and the court really ruled in the favor of the consumer, because it's a system that is developed by the airline. Right? So
Hmm.
even in the enterprise context, an output generated by the model has to be really anchored on facts, and that is where some of the techniques like RAG and all that come in. And there is also this concept of model validation. I mean, so one has to sort of validate the model output by. I mean, so there are various techniques around that. You could have a human in the loop. You could, in fact, use a different kind of prompting techniques using another LLM or the same LLM to validate the model output. See, all those techniques are there, and this field is evolving as we speak. So obviously, I mean, there has to be anchoring from a data perspective for all fact-based answers, and there has to be adequate model evaluation and safeguards before we actually roll out the model at an enterprise or a consumer level, right? So absolutely, I mean, this.
So while we know that the underlying LLM per se cannot be changed, at least in a specific version, so is it like the more and more data is fed into, and more context are fed into the system itself will sort of becoming more smarter to be able to address some of those nuances? So in this case, the Air Canada example that you took, will that, I mean, so where, at what layer actually the organization need to look into to fix that issue so that it doesn't happen in
Right,
future?
right.
Just
So,
if you can touch upon a little bit.
usually what happens is you have the LLM look at certain facts which are like outside of the model per se, and then the LLM or the Gen AI piece really provides the user context and the fluency of answering those questions. So those facts and those embeddings will have to be accurate, and you can fine tune. I mean, there are like various ways. I mean, there is model fine tuning, appropriate prompts, then RAG. right? So these are techniques to actually anchor the answers around specific facts or specific information that the organization wants to convey to the.
Got it. See, in this case, obviously it was an image, so the bias was immediately kind of understood or seen. But what
Right.
happens if this was a text?
Right. So similar, I mean, so the text is the similar techniques have to be used from a validation of text perspective as well. So, for example, I mean, if somebody had asked, give the composition of the Nazi army or something like that, I mean, I'm sure the model would have probably come up with similar set of, let's say, uh, diversity characteristics that are built in into inherently the framework for answering questions. So even in text, there has to be similar safeguards, and then especially when you are dealing with facts, the facts cannot be compromised. While you are trying to reduce the bias, I mean the facts are facts, right? So that has to be anchored on a specific data, which is historical, which is organizational.
Got it. Good. So with that, we will now switch gear and move to the second segment. Um, Here and now talk about a very interesting topic today, especially since you're an entrepreneur, and I'm sure that topic is pretty close to your interest and your experience as well. Since we keep talking about, say, for example, market and business, one of the key aspects over often gets overlooked is companies' internal talent related, whether it is productivity improvement, whether it is talent gap, or what what organization should do to upskill the talent from Gen AI perspective, right? So let me start with my first question. So basically, organization there is no set standard currently, as we know, because this is evolving, and everything is changing so quickly. In a situation like this, what do you think? How do organization should approach Gen AI in terms of upskilling talent, or upskilling or improving productivity for talent in the bigger context of Gen AI?
This is one of the key areas that all organizations should look at, especially when we are seeing Gen AI impacting many functional areas, right? I mean, be it marketing, be it finance, be it customer service, sales. So it is all pervasive. And what we have seen is Gen AI can significantly improve productivity for knowledge worker who can use Gen AI effectively. So I think at this stage, the biggest thing that an organization can do is to provide that exposure and let people experiment with Gen AI technologies, because some of these use cases are really discovered during the process of experimentation. And if you see, Gen AI is really a continuum of data and AI technologies that a lot of the organizations have been working on. It's not something that is come out of the blue, and it is evolved over time. So if you look at somebody who has been a great data scientist in the pre-Gen AI world, is the best suited for someone who can actually implement Gen AI. Right? So some of the examples where Gen AI, at least at the data scientist level, has improved productivity is things like exploratory data analysis, choosing the best fit model for a particular sort of data set or a task, and then improving coding productivity. So we have seen that code in multiple languages can be written through effective generation of prompts, and even if the data scientist or the analyst does not know the specific language, let's say R or Python or whatever, right? He or she can really write code in that language very quickly, as long as they know the fundamental sort of pieces of why that code exists or why that code needs to come through. Right? And then there are areas where Gen AI can help build the narrative also for data scientists.
Mhm.
So that's something that a lot of us have been using. So what I have seen succeed is an approach of openness and experimentation and sharing of knowledge. These are some of the effective strategies to uh, keep keep up pace with the fast pace of technology development that is happening in this space.
Yeah, I think considering as such the employees or the talent side are anyway exposed to so much of media attention on Gen AI, and there is so much of talk content are already available. It
Right.
only helps the organization to sort of open the window and give them that platform, give them that space, give them that opportunity to sort of, I guess, build on their skills, leverage their skills to build on something more meaningful and productive for the organization. So, like you rightly mentioned, probably openness and the mindset of experimentation and sharing knowledge is key to that path to success, right?
Correct. Correct. Absolutely.
So, as of now, do you see in first place there is a talent gap overall in the market, specifically with respect to Gen AI, and more importantly, for senior strategic roles, or not maybe senior, but strategic roles, more importantly, for data scientists and AI engineers?
Right. So I do not really think that the talent shortage issue has cropped up only now. I mean, there has always been a shortage of talent in this space, in the AI space or the data space, who can take a systemic view of the business process or the function and build solutions which integrate AI, right, and are effective improving business outcomes. And so at this point in time, I mean, I find it somewhat amusing when people say that, okay, Gen AI has come, so we need prompt engineers who have 3 years of experience in generating prompts, right? So that is really not called for, because somebody who understands fundamentally how these systems work, how the data works, and have a sort of a broader view of how AI or can help in improving business outcomes, is the most effective person to do it, right? So one thing which is key is it is not enough to have just coding skills. Analytical skills, problem solving, appreciation of the business context is more and more becoming important. And The other aspect is, because you are communicating in natural language, the communication skills, how you will communicate with business, how you will communicate with the technology teams, are becoming more and more important. So I would say it is a matter of sort of getting more exposure and getting those individuals who have the right context, right appreciation for how these models work, be at the forefront of deploying these technologies, and not really sort of hire for some esoteric skills which are not there, right?
Got it. Yeah, yeah. No, that is definitely true, and that leads me to a kind of again an obvious question that comes in mind is that what do you think is probably the most effective strategy, if not most, but effective strategy to a hire Gen AI talent and b therefore build a Gen AI specific talent team internally, considering there is
Right.
so much changes going on and there's a huge demand for such skills in the market.
So in this case, I mean, I lean towards a mixed approach to developing competency, as well as maybe getting it from outside. So first, we have to lead with business. What are the business use cases where you can actually look at, let's say, a very significant outcome of deploying Gen AI technologies. So once the business use cases are broadly sort of defined or identified, and that actually comes through some experimentation at the upfront stage, then we have to identify the right individuals who have the good business context for these use cases, and supplement the team with external experts who have a good fundamental understanding of how large language models can be put to work for the business use case. For example, I mean, it is important to know about how to create embeddings, how to vectorize, understand the concepts of output evaluation, how do you make it anchored on data, right? All of those things are very important for either the core team which is working on it, or somebody who is uh, advising or helping build these systems. And also, it is very important that these systems are really can prove to be costly if not used effectively. So it is also important to understand the context of cost. If we are are we utilizing the generative AI technologies, and the designing a solution which is uh, justified by the cost that you are putting into developing this system or running this system, right? So a mixture of I would say the business context, fundamental understanding of how large language models work, and also some infrastructure experience or to understand the cost implications of building such models is important. So I would say these skills can be really built over a period of time, but maybe to start with, it is appropriate to go with a mixed strategy of grooming the talent which is in-house, plus getting some experts who have experience in building such systems elsewhere.
Yeah. So to me, what it sounds like, internally, you need to have a team or maybe a couple of champions who also lead the way in terms of some of these best practices, and especially when the new talent comes on board, quickly ramping them up with both the internal sort of methodology or process that are being followed, and also giving them some use cases to sort of get them sort of to get onboarded and then get started as kind of handholded by these internal champions.
Correct, correct,
So
correct. Yeah.
I
So the
think
business case is
hmm,
extremely important. I mean, in terms of understanding the business context, technology cannot be deployed at vacuum. So understanding the business context and making sure that we are providing value, and at the same time also evaluating the output with respect to the context and the data in the organization. That is important.
and I think how cost plays a role there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Cost is.
Accessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. So I think we'll continue to discuss in these lines more in the future, especially talent is a key component of this entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
Um, but for now, today, we'll wrap it up here, and I can look forward to continue to chat with you in the future on these lines.